Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this video, I will be doing a quick book review for a book that I just recently read, which is The Blacktongue Thief by Christopher Bullman. And the reason I'm doing a review for this book and the reason that I decided to pick this up is because over on my Patreon, every month my patrons get to vote for which book they want me to read. And when I first started my Patreon, it was exclusively King, like people could pick which Stephen King book they want me to read and review for the channel. But I've kind of gone away with that, and now everyone can pick any book that they want to. So if you're interested in supporting me on Patreon, you certainly don't have to. But if you're interested, you will get to vote for any book that you want me to read. So Kate Coy is my newest member, and she won her very first month, which is awesome. And she picked The Blacktongue Thief. And I'm going to do a quick review for it right now. I will say right at the top, I did not have a great time with this book. I know a lot of people love this book, and I was excited to read this book when I got it on Audible. And that's the other thing. I listened to this on Audible. I don't own a physical copy. The narration was very good, and it was narrated by the author himself, Christopher Bullman. But for me, I did not have a great time with it, and of course, I'll get a little bit into that. This review is not going to be super long because I don't really have too many positives to say about it, and I don't want to be like really ranty about this book because it's not a bad book. It just wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy it. But we'll get into that into the review, which will start right about now. So essentially what I knew about this book going into it is that it was about this guy named Kinch, who is a thief, and he, went to, I guess the equivalent of like a school to go learn all of the skills that a thief would need. But at the beginning of the story, you realize like, oh, he's in a lot of debt, and just it's essentially, reflecting back on real student debt that students have today. So that was a pretty interesting premise of like, oh, this guy is dealing with essentially college debt in a fantasy setting. So that was a pretty interesting concept for me. I also knew that this story was supposed to be very funny and very witty, which it definitely was. And I definitely feel like the author / audiobook narrator, Christopher Bullman, did a very good job with that aspect. It was a very funny book at times and very witty, and I did enjoy some character moments that Kinch had. My main issue with the book, and this is basically the book in its entirety, is that it's all over the place and it's very aimless, and I had a really hard time focusing on what was actually happening because, like I said, this story was just not focused. It jumped all over the place, and it's a short book already, and the audiobook was like 12 hours, and there's like 60 chapters, and I feel like there must have been at least like 30 or 40 different things that the character did in the whole book, and I don't remember more than half of them, probably more, and it's just all over the place. Like just every other chapter something else is happening that doesn't feel relevant or necessary to like the actual goal of the main character. And I know a lot of people don't mind that because they just fall in love with Kinch and they'll just follow him wherever he goes, right? But for me, even though I do consider myself a character driven reader, I still need the characters to have some sort of goal or to have some sort of desire, right? But for this book, I just kept losing focus, and I would have to like rewind. I'm like, wait, where are we? What are we doing? Why is this necessary? What is going on? I kept having to do that because just like I said, every other chapter would just be something completely different. And some of those chapters were cool, right? But at other times I'm just like, why did we need this chapter? What did this bring to the story? Why do I care? And for most of this book, I honestly did not care about the plot at all, and I didn't really care what was happening. I didn't really care about the side characters. Kinch himself, I really like the main character, Kinch. I did like his character and I did like his comedy and his personality, but at the same time, I need more than just that to propel a story forward. Like I said, I do consider myself a character driven reader, but if there's not something to just like grab onto with that character, I might have a harder time liking the story, and that was definitely evident with the Blacktongue Thief. But like I said, there were some cool moments in this book, and that brings me to another positive. Like the world building itself was very interesting. There's a lot of interesting creatures and just random stuff in this book that was really cool. There's kraken, there's witches, there's really just awful goblins, and a lot of interesting stuff going on. But I also feel like he tried to jam pack so much into one story that it just really didn't feel cohesive. Like there's a lot of cool stuff happening, well, not all the time, but there was cool stuff in the book. I just felt like it was too much and just try to jam pack everything into one. I guess this is a standalone, although it does leave room, I guess, for a sequel. But he just tried to jam pack so much into one book, and it really didn't work for me. I wouldn't say I normally like books like this where there's just like there is like a overall thing that the character's trying to accomplish, but then there's just like tons of side quests essentially. Probably the one book that is the exception is Kings of the Wild, which is like a top 10 book for me all time. Which that book, like, it has a clearly defined goal. They're trying to get to a destination to save someone. And there are random side quests. But I do feel like with those, it brings out the characters more. It raises the stakes. And for me, that one just felt very well done. Whereas this one, a lot of what happened in this book didn't feel necessary, I didn't give a shit about, or it was forgettable. And like I said, there was so much it jam-packed into this book that honestly I have a hard time remembering all that went down. Like there's definitely some scenes that I'll remember, but a lot of this book is just a fog to me now, and I just finished this like 2 days ago. So yeah, this book definitely was not for me. I am glad to say, however, that a few people on my Discord server that are buddy reading it with me are enjoying it much more than I am. I think I'm kind of the odd one out, including Kate Coy, who I think just finished it and gave it 4.5 stars. She really liked it, and I'm definitely glad for that. But yeah, I seem to be the odd one out, although I did look on Goodreads because I was just so curious about the people who would give it like 2 or 3 stars, and I think I'm leaning towards 2.5 stars just because I really didn't enjoy a lot of it. But again, I'm not going to say it's a terrible book, so 2.5 stars. I looked on Goodreads at the people who did give it 2 and 3 stars, and they did have very similar complaints to me, where they enjoyed the world building and they enjoyed the character, but they had a really hard time focusing on the book itself, and it just seemed so aimless at times, or most of the time. So I do feel a little validated that I'm not the only one that has that opinion, although we do seem to be the odd one out. And this has a terrific rating on Goodreads. Most people who read this book seem to enjoy it, and I hope whoever reads this after watching this review, hopefully y'all enjoy it as well. This book just was not for me, although I would be tempted to try out the author's other works because I think he's mainly a horror writer, and definitely some scenes in here definitely leans towards, like the scary side of fantasy, like dark fantasy. So I could see him being a good horror writer, but this book was just not for me. That's the easiest way to sum up this book. It's not a terrible book, but it just was not for me. All right, that's my little quick review for The Blacktongue Thief, the aimless book that I liked the main character and some of the world building aspects, but it was just so aimless and I had a really hard time focusing on it that I really couldn't enjoy most of it. And I think I will rate the book 2.5 stars. Not terrible, but just not for me. So what did you guys think of The Blacktongue Thief? Have you read it? Please let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Whether you loved it, or whether you hated it, or whether you thought it was kind of meh like I did. Please leave all of your comments down below. And thank you guys so much for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to go join my Patreon page, which, you know, that's the whole reason I read this book in the first place, you can go vote for any book that you want me to read there, and it'll be put on the wheel every month and have a pretty good shot at getting me to read a book that you choose. And also subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Bookish Drummer Discord, and I have my Amazon wish list if anyone would like to buy me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a fantastic day.